I'm Theresa Schumilas. I'm with Garden Party Flower Farm. I've been a farmer for a long time and a flower farmer since about 2013. 4-acre site. Up to last year, I sold exclusively wholesale to designers, and now I'm in retirement. And so I'm trying to keep the same or close to the same net revenue. So I'm switching to retail because I'm slowly decreasing my acreage and so forth. But I'm also working with a group called Open Food Network Canada, who has a project going on for this year and one more year yet to try to see what we can do to help grow the cut flower sector in Canada. And we started this project because Open Food Network is an open source e-commerce platform, and really our mission is around helping small food chains connect and sell better. But we were finding a lot of flower farmers were coming to us and using the platform. And so that was kind of interesting. And that might have been because of me, but regardless, it was interesting. So we have started looking more closely at what flower farmers would need in a platform, whether we can meet that or not. But also, um, we wanted to get a sense of who are these flower farmers and what the heck is happening. And so we did a survey, and you'll see those results on our website if you haven't already. And that led us to the idea of doing um, a bunch of educational events and involve others in them, mostly crowdsourcing and sharing, because I'm certainly no expert. And just to add some additional resources out there, because there were so many new flower farmers, we were kind of blown away by that. So today we're going to talk about what's hot and what's not, and look at a 2024 season reflection. It's going to go like this. I'm going to start by giving you a bit of a tool for how you can do reflection, because I don't think it's just as simple as saying, I remember what happened, because you probably don't, unless you're way better memory than I have. Um, and then I'll go through that template on doing a reflection on Garden Party Flower Farm, my farm, and then we'll open it up to others. And one of the things about today, okay, why am I, there we go, okay. One of the things about today is that one of the things we want to do is a bit of a kind of evergreen listing online of the best resources for flower farmers in Canada, because we have some very unique needs across this country. And we need your help to do that. So during today's workshop, every time you speak or ask a question, verbally or in the chat, please share a resource that you have found helpful. Try not to duplicate resources already suggested. And these could be YouTube channels, associations, books, podcasts, articles, whatever. If you don't feel you can do it today, you can email it to me. You can email me at support@openfoodnetwork.ca. Please try to avoid not to message Garden Party Flower Farm on social media, because really that's just going to get lost. That's such a crazy channel there. So I'm trying to keep all of this stuff at support, Open Food Network. And then I'll collate it and it'll be online, and we'll keep updating it over the next year or so. Okay, so what is the value of what I'm calling a seasonal crops reflection? Um, so what this is at the end of every season, of course, it's helpful to think back over your entire season and think about, things that didn't, oh, I should have said, this presentation is being recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel. I'll make sure you get that link. And the presentation slides themselves will also be on our website. So you don't need to worry if any of the print is small or anything like that. You can reflect on what you could have grown more of, what blew you away, what completely failed, what took way too much time, etc. And why would one do this? Because one of the things we found in the survey is that being stressed out because I'm trying to do it all is one of the most common and top gaps or problems that flower farmers in Canada are feeling. And cuts across all scales. Everybody feels burnt out. It's why we say sloggist. And one of the reasons I think people feel burnt out as you're trying to grow too many things. So if you can find the right mix for you, the right timing, the right sales plan, etc., then you can really slim up and trim back the crops you're growing and totally forget about some things. And then you're only growing mixes that do well. And then land that, if you have the land that would have been taken up by flowers, you can put them into cover crops. It's far better for the land anyway. It's not that crops left standing in the field are bad. Of course, they're good for pollinators and any roots are good for soil. But if you deliberately sowed a cover crop there, it would be easier to manage than any field of flowers will be. So the thing is, though, a good reflection is hard. It sounds easy. I just have to remember, but really, can you remember? Can you remember things like which daffodils were the hit? Or was it the white or the apricot cosmos that sold more? Or, you know, which one specifically did better with pinching? Which things had the pests? It's not always that easy to remember at the end of the season. And so I kind of come up with a way of sort of structuring your reflection. It's just a way of thinking about your season using different lenses or different filters, just simply so that you can remember better. So one way to think about your season is by season. Think of the spring, the early summer, the fall, and try to remember what was hot and what was not. If you've got sales records, and really that would be a good thing to have, actually go through them by season. Um, Another way to reflect is by weather, because we often remember weather and significant weather events stand out in our minds. So what was happening during that significant event? What crops were hit by it the most? Think about uh, your crops by their cost and the time you put. You can actually look at your records to see the cost. Time is a little harder if you're not tracking it, but you probably have a sense of where was I the most, which row took me the most time, which field did I always seem to be standing in. You can also reflect on your cultivation and pests and the crops associated. So if there was a crop that attracted more pests, that's going to be a standout for you. You've got some decisions to make about that. Um, and of course, by your customers, and always ask them, what did they want more of? What didn't they like? What have they asked you for? So that's a very obvious way to reflect. And also, I think by love. So what is it that you just love growing? Because in a way, doesn't matter if it sells or not. If you just love it and you like spending time with it, there's no reason not to do it. So I'm going to go through each of those for Garden Party Flower Farm, and I'll go fairly quickly because I want to hear from you. But again, this is will be on the website if you want to go back to it. So for me, when I think of what was hot and what was left on my farm, this spring was the first spring I had grown early greenhouse snaps. So when I say early, they were there for Mother's Day. Big hit all around, very hot. And alliums, if you don't grow alliums, I've now decided that alliums is a core flower for me. Very hot in the spring. Of course, we would expect peonies, tulips. Foxgloves was outstanding for me this year as well. And it was the first year I grew campanula and they were a hit. What was left in the field? Bleeding hearts and certain lupins. That's probably just a reflection that I'm still scaling down and I still have too many perennials. So I'm gradually getting out of those uh, not getting out of them, but decreasing the amount I have to maintain. In early summer, zinnias were very hot. I grow foxtail lilies, very, very popular. Cosmos was up there. But I also found that I had way too many echinops, which again, it's just a holdover from having so many perennials. And Amy, I'm sworn off of. I'm totally sworn off of Amy. I found I just didn't need it in anything. I didn't use it in anything. It's taking up a whole row of netting out there. Um, so that wasn't very useful. In late summer, of course, Lisianthus. A big surprise for me was Amaranthus because I had kind of gotten out of it a little bit, but back into vogue, it seems. And asters were a surprise for me because I had gotten out of asters for a long time because I didn't think they were doing that well for me cultivation wise, but I grew plugs last year and they were fantastic. But things like gomphrena, really bright colored celotias, most of my millets really were left out there. I just, and it just hits me. You plant the things, you wait, they're blooming, and then a few months later you pull them out and put them on the compost pile. What a complete waste of time that is. And that was certainly gomphrena. It just doesn't sell. And then in the fall, dahlias, which I'm having a new love relationship with after a long hate relationship, and they did well. Fall anemone, all the perennial sunflowers, and again, foxgloves in the fall and so forth. I was a little surprised about my hyacinths that were hyacinth pods, which used to be really popular when I sold to designers, but really. Currently, not that many people know how or want to use hyacinth pods. And the hydrangeas. I think that's because they were just too big and I need to prune them differently so they get smaller. So already I've got some direction of the stuff that I can drop, and I'm always looking for 5 good ones to drop. I want to drop 5 things somehow in my reflection. Okay, if I think by weather, one of my problems with weather is we had really bad rainstorms from early spring to summer. I lost all the direct seeded zinnias and all the direct seeded sunflowers. So one way I need to think about this differently is to do more pre-starts of those things. Because what if I get that rain again? So to try to change up my cultivation, to try to head that off at the pass. I was also really glad because of that rain for the summer perennials, that I don't know what I would have done without them. So that was a reinforcing for me of things I want to keep. Bad iris performance this year. So I want to diversify and plant different types of iris because iris is a big seller for me. And then we had early spring heat. It really affected my stock. And really, I think stock is on my drop it list. I just can't do it as well as commercially chains are doing it. And as long as I'm selling to florists, it just doesn't seem to be worth it for me. And then we had this hot fall weather, and the effect of that still remains to be seen because all my cool flower plugs bloomed. So I don't know how well they're going to do for Mother's Day next year. But as a buffer, I'm going to do a very early, like week 10, um, transplanting of snapdragons, just in case the ones that are in there already and bloomed don't do so well. So another way to reflect is by cost and time. So for me, tulips always comes to the top of this list when I do this. Only the fancy ones sell. There's a low net income on these. I have resolved to consider them a loss leader. They're great in the Mother's Day bouquet bar. They're reliable for me for Mother's Day. And so I'm just going to accept that I'm growing a crop that is not making me money because it's bringing people into my stand for the season. Scoop scabs were very popular, but they barely paid for themselves in 2024. That was really different from 2023, where they clearly made me money. So something about the weather. I'm resolving with this because the florists I sell to want more scab. I'm going to give them mixes of the scoops and the non-scoops and see how that maybe makes the scoops a little more profitable if they're in a mix. And Cosmos, I found, was a big time waster for me just in the harvesting because I only did one sowing. And you know what that's like? By the time they've gone through their first flush, it's just picking over things. It takes forever. Be far better to have multiple sowings and just flip the bed where the first ones are and not worry about picking over them. What about by pests or other cultivation issues? Well, I get grasshoppers in my greenhouse, which is very much of a pain because they love dahlias, and I have dahlias in the greenhouse. So next year I'm going to move the dahlias out. I'm not even going to try to do earlier dahlias. I've got the lisianthus then anyway. Dahlias will just be later. And that might solve my grasshopper problem a little bit in there. For some reason this year, I do not really know why, absolutely no tarnished plant bugs, which was the whole reason I stopped growing dahlias in the first place. So I'm just crossing my fingers and I'm going to try to scale up on dahlias again and maybe I'll be lucky. I had strange agrostema damage, and I don't really know what it was, but I want to keep growing it. I'm not going to drop it because of that damage. I'm going to try it in a different location and see how that does for me. And I had very poor columbine. I was trying to perennialize columbine, and the plants came through, but they just didn't bloom as well as they do when they're biennial. So that says to me, because I like to grow columbine, I will keep growing it, but I'm always going to treat it as a biennial. Okay, so by customer group, I identified four major customers groups on my farm. Do-it-yourself buckets. So these are brides who are ordering bulk buckets. A bouquet bar, which is a weekly bouquet bar I set up here it was a tent last year in the driveway. And then I separated these out because I think they're different groups. Designers, so these are people who are buying flowers for events mostly, and shop florists. These are brick and mortar florists who are buying flowers for everything from funerals to whatever. Um, the do-it-yourself bucket, like this is just because I choose what's in them. There's no issue. As long as I don't change, I sort of have a formula so that basically I have bucket of whites every week of the season. And that's kind of key to that. But everything with there is good. There's nothing I really need to take away from that to cut or add. Bouquet bar, similarly, whatever is here is great on the bouquet bar. This is the beauty I have found of selling retail over selling wholesale to designers. It can be like whatever. But when I asked the customers there, they were looking for more sunflowers, mine failed, and they were looking for more asters. So that was interesting. Maybe it's the flowers they know. They often look for flowers they know. With the designers, they were looking for irises. Again, I had a failure there. And they were looking for early and later butterfly snaps. They just love the butterfly snaps. So I'll be doing more of those. Um, and for the shop florists, this was the first year I really spent a lot of time with shop florists, and they're quite different. They're really looking for things they can't get in the chains, of course, or like in the wholesale chain. So mixed marigolds. They love my line flowers. So anything that's tall. So I'm going to do more of the larkspur, and they preferred larkspur to delphinium, but they also love like things like the foxtail lilies and the why am I struggling? Oh, irises. So I'm really going to focus on line flowers for them. So by this I mean like tall, straight flowers. Love the lupins, peonies, and Liz, but they want them longer. Well, I don't know if I can do them for much more weeks than I have, but I'm going to try. And they really like amaranthus, which surprised me. And the scabious I already mentioned. Some things they didn't like was informative for me. I have a lot of thalacrum, meadow rue, and they didn't really like that, whereas designers like kind of love it. So that's interesting. They aren't so keen on white lisianthus, which was interesting because, of course, designers are just looking for white, and I had lots and lots of white. And unfortunately, I got their feedback after I already ordered plugs for next year. So again, I'll have lots and lots of white, but they feel they can get the white pretty easily, unless it's a frilly white or a double white. It's not something they see as unique lisianthus. They love the colored lisianthus, which I had kind of gotten away from. So that was interesting. Again, they just didn't understand hyacinth beans and how they would use them. They don't like lilies that face down. So martagon lilies, which I had quite a lot of, they would prefer not to do lilies at all if those were the only ones I have. And I mentioned already the Gumfrenia and the tulips. And then the last kind of way to reflect is by love. So what do I take by that? I always like to be trying something new because being on that curve kind of keeps me, engaged and excited. And so I have been into trialing florist mums and maybe some more heritage mums that I'll gradually add just to see if I can get them reliably as a sellable crop to flower shops for Thanksgiving. I think if I can get them reliably for Thanksgiving, then that's a really nice Thanksgiving market, I think. So I'm going to keep playing around with that. I think I'm going to add a December holiday market. This is brand new for me. I've never sold in December, wreaths or greenery or whatever. But I watch everybody else's posts and I think, I think I could do that. So I'm going to try my first holiday market in 2025. And so I'll be following all your posts really closely to see your tips for that. Um, and here I say it out loud, and I'm still on the fence. Circling back to pick your own. I used to do pick your own. I got out of pick your own. I swore never again. And I'm feeling like maybe it's calling me again. Um, we made some changes to the setup of things on the farm here, and it's kind of even better for pick your own, or will be next year. So I don't know, still on the fence, but when I asked my customers at the bouquet bar what they wanted, every single person asked to come back to pick your own. So there's a big demand for it, so I'm revisiting. Um, I'm going to keep up growing as much Lysianthus, even though it goes on the compost pile, because I just love it so much. And really, they're tough little seedlings. I think they're relatively easy. I don't know how Lysianthus got this rap as being a hard to grow flower. I just don't think it is. And I just love seeing it. I love seeing it when I walk through the field. It's probably the only flower I actually pick for my own house. Um, and I last year I had so much I tried to introduce this Lysianthus festival in August. So I'm going to try that again and really try to introduce consumers to Lysianthus a little bit more. And I'm scaling up dahlias. And so we'll see. If the tarnished plant bugs come back, I'm ditching out of this again really, really fast. But as long as they're not here, then dahlias are another one that I think is a good one for me to come back to. So taking all that together, here's kind of a summary of what changes I'm going to make in 2025 to make my life easier. I'm going to do this early, week 10, Lysianthus and butterfly snaps in the greenhouse. The butterfly snaps, because I'm pretty sure the cool flowers that already bloomed won't be so nice anymore for Mother's Day. And I'm trying to extend the Lysianthus season. I'm going to do early starts for zinnias and sunflowers instead of direct seeding. I've got more aster plugs coming because those were very popular with several groups. I'm going to force myself to do the multiple sowings of these things, cosmos and zinnias for sure. And with foxgloves, if you use a combination of biennials and annuals, greenhouse and non, pretty much can have foxgloves every week over the season. And it's one of these crossover flowers. It's popular for weddings, for designers, for flower shops, for consumers, kind of like Lysianthus that way. So I'm going to pay more attention there. Definitely dropping 3 things at least: stock, white ammy, and gomphrena. Some of the millets too, at least significantly cutting back on the millets. Move the agrostemma to a different place. It's a popular flower here. I don't want to drop it, but I don't want to have the trouble I had last year again. Adding different irises in case we get into wet weather again. Different lupins to try to extend the season, maybe put them in some different locations, more larkspur. And downsizing some of my perennial plantings, peonies, bleeding hearts, echinops. I could probably add astilbe and some other things to that list as well. Okay, so that's me. I'm going to take this off because I would like to hear from you. Who would like to start with some takeaways from your own reflection from your farm for 2024?
I can go, Theresa. It's Nancy Jordan. I had the same thing with the agrostemma. I just want to say that before I forget. And it was, I think it might be thrip. Was it a mark all the way up your leaves?
Yes, small brown marks on every
Yeah,
single leaf. The
yeah,
flowers were okay if I took the time
yeah,
to pull off every single leaf, but
same thing, same thing. But I mean, the flowers were beautiful and we were able to use them. So I'll still grow those as well. A few things I think, well, we went back to glads this year and I'm going to continue again, but we had the same problem last year. And I believe also it was thrips this year. I put them in all kinds of different areas instead of all in a row, and I succession planted them, and they were fantastic. And the last succession I did in the hoop house, and we had them in late September, early October, and they were great. Went really big into roses last year and added to it this year, but they're all in a hoop house and they did exceptionally well. And I think we'll add those even more. Roses did well with OFN and designers, different florists. We do a lot of edibles. So pansy, marigold, stock will continue with big time. We're doing probably 5 to 6 clamshells at least per week. But we do a few restaurants. So I think that's part of the reason why it goes so well. And we're still doing those. The hoop houses have still got the pansies in stock going just fine in them. So we'll continue with that. Lysianthus, same as you, more, love it, love growing it. I start pretty much all of it from seed. I do get the odd plug-in, but it's funny, the plugs seem to be the ones that I have trouble with the root, where, you know, you lose the plant. Don't have it when I'm doing it from seed, but I do use Root Shield. I guess I could soak the plugs in the root shield before I plant them. More sunflowers next year. It's funny because I work with my daughter. I do the growing. She does the selling and designing. She didn't like sunflowers originally. Now she loves them. So we'll grow more of those. Lost Gumfrina last year, and I think it was the right decision. Won't be growing Cerinthe anymore. Didn't sell. Amy, I'm on the same page as you. Dara, though, we had a lot of people wanting the Dara. And marigolds. They love marigolds, the florists. And they're excellent edibles, so we use them. Delphinium, we sell a lot of. Lupin, we sell a lot of. I do have a lot of perennials. I have a lot of perennials in my home gardens, so we can take from there if there's not enough in the field. So we're constantly cutting out of my garden. I think that's about it. And then for resource, I'm going to plug the Association of Specialty Cut Flowers group. And I really, really suggest that anybody that doesn't have a membership to that, get one. It's worth its weight in gold. And because now the VP is a Canadian, I really think we should promote it. And congratulations, Janice, on that. It's an amazing association, and the cost, if you really figure it out, is less than $1 a day. People go to Tim's every day. They go to Starbucks. You can afford to join the association. And I'll be on the Canadian Flowers Farmers Facebook group suggesting that as well, because I really believe in the association. And I'm going to hand it over to someone else.
Just before you do, Nancy,
Yeah.
could you just give a quick summary, like not a lot of details about your farm, but just something about your scale and what the major channels are you sell in?
Sure. So originally we were a landscape company since 1983, so a long time. Sold the landscape company in 2013. We're on 25 acres. We have about 5 acres of house gardens that I've been working on with the help of my family and husband, since about 1987. So they're mature perennial borders, shrubs, trees. And then when we sold in 2013, we took a bit of time off. We were supposed to be retired. I am an elderly farmer, not young like all these people that I'm seeing. And we have about 2 acres that we've put into production for the flower farm, 100-foot by 20 hoop house and a 50 by 20 hoop house. I have very small solar, well, it's actually a ground uh, sourced greenhouse and another smaller greenhouse. Most of my seedlings I'm starting inside and then moving up to one of the greenhouses when they get big enough. And I think I have about 25, 2,600 foot beds and three 300-foot beds. We're selling to with the OFN, so we're with the Ottawa Flower Collective. We're at a couple of markets, and we have a couple of florists that buy mostly from us during the like our season, April till now, and a couple of restaurants that we do. And then we do some wedding work, do it yourself buckets, and we have a CSA subscription.
Thanks, thanks so much for that, Nancy.
No worries.
Generous of you to share. Who else would like to share what's hot for you and what's not, what wasn't in 2024?
I can go next. Um, yes, I'm Svava, Concession Road Garden, Southwestern Ontario, Haldimand County. It was by far, and this is kind of fourth year for us, the worst year. Everything we had so much rain, like you did, Theresa. And so that I think created just the perfect environment for all the soil borne, all the pests. We lost all our field planted snapdragons, our field planted stock, which I love. I'm going to keep trying because I do love them. And Lysianthus was a total write-off. Some of it may have been sort of part of the soil. Some of it also has to do with the fact that we're on clay and we just can't keep up with adding the organic material. It's our biggest expense, our biggest cost every year. We scaled back down again because I had an injury, and yeah, but still are looking forward to growing more in the unheated greenhouse. So I'm going to do the Lysianthus in there. I do have perennials in there. I've got eucalyptus that I'd like to get more of in the greenhouse. Over winter too, heather, which is really nice in spring bouquets and kind of arrangements. I love it. It's sort of something that speaks to my background. And yeah, but it was a really tough year, made me think of quitting at the end of it because but I can't want to carry on, want to do more of this craziness next year. So
Can you recommend a resource, Svava,
a resource
for flower farmers?
for flower farms.
Yeah, we're trying to get a crowdsourced list going of best resources, things you like to use, or podcasts or
Or
YouTube channels.
podcasts. I love the flower podcast with now I can't remember his name, which is really lovely. Jenny Love is always great when she gets on the program. I do listen to the Dirt on Flowers, which is great. And as far as just sort of like YouTube stuff, Common Flower Farm, Georgie in the UK is wonderful. And also a young woman, now I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, some really good kind of practical tips and advice for like things like market wrap, like, wrapping bouquets for market. And our primary sales channel is through the farmers market and our own, I have a little studio that I sell out of as well. So
Perfect. Thanks so much. Who'd like to go next?
I can go next, Theresa. It's
Perfect.
Andrea. So I am Andrea. I'm from Hardscrabble Blooms. We are in southwestern Ontario. So a little bit about us is we grow on a couple acres, very efficiently on a couple acres. We sell primarily to wholesale to florists, as well as a lot of fellow flower farmers. I love that there's this community in southwestern Ontario where we're able to help kind of supplement each other when we don't have, an early crop or a late crop, or, one color of dahlia didn't do great. So I love that option to supplement each other. So that's something that we're really working with a lot of people in our community. in terms of how our year went, so definitely a few hiccups in the spring with how much rain there was. We definitely identified some areas of our farm that we need to retile. There was like standing water in some areas for longer than we wanted, and everything just wasn't happy. A lot of that was in our dahlia fields. We were able to recover, but definitely the climate with the increasing amount of like heavy rains in the spring as opposed to consistent rains, it has been a challenge for us. With that being said, dahlias, I love dahlias. They were still our largest crop for the season, and it's definitely an aspect we're still going to continue to grow. Lisianthus is we're going to continue to grow in terms of like larger numbers, marigolds in larger numbers. And then the last 2 years, we've done a lot of heritage mums trials. So I think we've narrowed down where we want to go with that. So we're going to increase them in numbers as a way to kind of extend our season into the fall a little bit later. They're very resilient, which was great to see. Things that we kind of did to help this season for us were we planted into a biodegradable mulch, like the plastic mulch, but it's actually made from like corn. So it is biodegradable, and that was a game changer for us. So a lot easier able to stay on top of weeding, on top of watering, on top of controlling controlling everything. We did plugs into it, we did direct seeding into it, and it was a total game changer for production. Direct seeding everything. We're going to do more successions of everything, kind of like you said, Theresa, with the cosmos, things like that. We already did a few, but we're going to be more diligent in staying on top of it because it gets really hard when it gets to July and you're like, I don't want to, but I'm going to. Direct seeding into the biomulch is literally a game changer because you know what's coming up, you know what's happening, you control the moisture a lot easier. So that was great for us. Doing a lot more early season flowers, a lot more line flowers, like you said. We've decided we're treating our delphiniums like an annual. So that's a new change for us coming into 2025, but I think it's going to be a really good change. And then for a resource, maybe not 100% floral related, but definitely farming related, I'm going to go with Omafra. So they have a ton of ag information. So whether you're looking at soil health, cover crops, insects like pest pressure, weed pressure, Omafra is an absolutely amazing resource. For us with dahlias being our big crop that we're expanding in every year, just think about growing a potato. So maybe we're not looking at a 100% a flower resource, but a potato and a dahlia have a lot of similarities in terms of how you deal with your weed pressure, your pest pressure, how to farm it, how to, feed your soil. So I'd say Omafra is an amazing resource.
Sorry, I'm not quick enough on my clicker here. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Andrea. That was wonderful. Who else would like to share a reflection on their season?
I can go.
Oh, fantastic.
So I don't have a whole lot because we had moved farms. I'm starting from scratch again. So this year we just did peonies, 1,000 of them, and we did it as a fundraiser because I wasn't sure how it was going to go because it was new land, new everything. So we raised 15,000 meals for the food bank. So that was really cool. This year I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but the thing that I was really nervous about was that I had undersowed it with clover, Dutch white clover. And I wasn't sure, is it going to take away nutrition, water, whatever. So the end of the previous fall, when we had cut everything down, you couldn't even see where the peonies were anymore. It was just like a field of clover. Like, what have I done? They came up beautifully, really well, and really healthy. So that was really interesting. I'm going to be diving a lot more into what else can I undersow perennials or whatever. So I just came off of a course last week. It's with a guy named Graham Sate. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He's from Australia. He's got his blog is nutritech.com. I'll put it in the chat here. It's in just a second, as soon as I finish talking. So anyways, they've got some really great products. And so the company that I get the stuff through is Agriculture Solutions based out of Shakespeare. Dave DeVries. He's my uncle, so he's been very helpful to me. I've gotten all my soil tests through there, and it's really deep diving into Brix levels and all that kind of stuff. This course, they're talking about anything you could think of, like talking about silica for stem strength, in addition to calcium and all the different nutrients and how they work together. So foliar feeding has been huge for me because you really can bypass what's that good. You really no, just a minute. Sorry, little kids. You really can bypass all of the nutritional deficiencies in your soil when you use foliar feeding. So hugely recommend leaning into that resource. They've got tons of information and great products.
It would be great if you put the link to Ag Solutions when you get a chance in the chat. That's fantastic. I had no idea that Dave was your uncle. That's really cool. Okay. More. Anybody else? This is all fantastic. Love the underplanting with perennials. Anybody have questions if you don't want to share? Questions you want to ask?
I guess I'll share. My name's Corin. I have a prairie bouquet in near Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, in zone two. I've got about probably like not very much, like a half or maybe a quarter acre in production. I was doing cut flowers, and then I sort of transitioned more into native plants. So I have like sort of a native plant business, and then I'm still just selling to florists. But now it's essentially like I've got two businesses instead of just one. So what I've done, I've really kind of cut back on a lot, but I've been leaning more onto perennials so that there's just not so much work in the spring. And then this year I've really decided that I'm just going to focus just on those early spring crops. So like I've got the peonies that are going, martigons, everything that blooms in that one like 6-week window, 2 weeks before the peonies, and then I can hold the peonies for a full month, like dry store. So I'm just gonna like because I work full time, so this has to be a part-time business, and I can't treat it like a full-time because it's just too much. I've already got a full-time business or a full-time job, sorry. So I'm just trying to like condense all my connections to florists during that 6 weeks, and I think that's really gonna simplify my whole year, so I can just focus on delphiniums and columbine, Solomon seal, martigons, peonies, and I've got some clematis recta in there too that the florists really like. So sometimes, not expanding it, like if you can only donate so much time so that you don't burn out, because I was really burning out trying to do like the full season. It just wasn't working. So it was either quit or somehow scale back down. So that's kind of where I went. And I'm really, really liking just having this narrowed focus. And then I can really, just hone in on those crops, like you said, like cutting down on those crops. Where my resources, there's somebody on the Big Flower Farmers group on Facebook that they developed something sort of like the OFN, but really small scale and just for flowers. It's called floralist.com. And you can just make an account, and like within minutes, you can just populate it with your crops, and then you'd have like a link to send to your florists, and they would just order what they want, and then it just sends you the order, forget what it's called, like an order request or whatever. And then it can actually if somebody's requested those, it'll take them out of inventory. And then so it's like a real time, it's really simple and really effective. This is just what I was looking for. It doesn't have any cost. She just made it for herself because she just needed that. And like rooted was so expensive kind of thing. So it's really great. So it's floralist.com. Another one, of course, the Slow Flowers podcast. I don't think anyone's mentioned that yet. Sustainable Flowers podcast, Heather Henson and Clara in Alberta. And also Shifting Blooms. She has a website, YouTube channel, and she's in Saskatchewan, so Zone 3 grower. And then, of course, like You Can't Eat the Grass. Let's all support. Can't eat the grass. So that's all. Thanks so much for doing this, Theresa. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great sharing. I also toyed with this idea at one point of just the last year I sold into the Toronto Collective, I tried to do that to say, okay, I'm just in for that window of mostly perennials, peonies, perennials, early like cool flower annuals, and by the time we get to the middle of July, I'm done. And it worked, except I love Lysianthus so much. And so then I had all these Lysianthus, so then wasn't worth delivering if I only had Lysianthus. So then I had to have other things to fill the van and all of that. So I got back in. But yes, I think that's an excellent idea. If you're in a local market and you don't need a wide range of things for what you do, to just pick a season. Wonderful idea. I like it.
Having my summer back was such a game changer because you could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and just seeing that light and the peonies dwindling in the cooler, and then you're like, oh, I'm almost done, and then you can go to the lake. Oh my God.
Mhm. No, it's a good suggestion. Anyone else?
I'll go next
Perfect.
so my name is Yolanda, and I'm located in Southern Alberta and pretty new. This was actually our first year that we were kind of open to the public. Last year I did sort of a trial year, just kind of a practice year to just kind of get all of my beds set up and trial a few different kinds of plants. So I also work full time at another job. My husband and I, we actually have our own business, which takes up a lot of time, but the flowers are really a passion project for me. And I actually grow both flowers and herbs. So the herbs are things that you would use for teas like lemon balm and peppermint and different things like that. So Um, so for me, again, because I work full time, I've decided to have to do more of a U-pick model. So that's what I find requires the least amount of time from me in terms of like harvesting and making bouquets and, taking them to markets and all those different sorts of things. It was an amazing year. We didn't have any weather issues or anything like that. Last year we had a really hot, dry year, so we were in a drought. But this year, actually, the weather was almost ideal. Here in Alberta, we have something called Open Farm Days. I don't know if that exists in other provinces, but that was just an amazing event for us. So many people came out, and it was so popular. So. In terms of things, again, because it's a you pick, you can really tell what people like and what they don't. I mean, sometimes, there's certain flowers that look nice in a bouquet, but when people are picking them themselves, you can really see what people are attracted to. So amaranthus was really popular. Everybody wanted to know what it was. The zinnias, obviously, the pink poker status, people really seem to like. Not so much the regular status, but the pink pokers especially. They really like the bunny tails and the frosted explosion grass, the bells of Ireland, the echinops, sunflowers, obviously. They like the straw flowers. In terms of the ones that they really didn't seem to be that interested in, Gomphrena was one that people just generally didn't even touch. And also I was growing a Rudbeckia, but just a very kind of plain yellow kind of Rudbeckia hirta. And nobody was all that interested in that for some reason. I'm not sure why. And the regular status, which was just like the formula mix, wasn't all that popular. So we, in terms of pests, what I really struggled with, my biggest struggle this year was gophers. They ate almost all of my sunflowers. I had big plans to do like succession plantings of sunflowers every week. The initial ones, they didn't discover them right away. The second kind of third succession, they discovered that they made tasty little microgreens. And by the time I got to like the third or fourth succession, they realized that they could just dig the seeds right up out of the ground before they even sprouted. So that was one of my biggest ones. Snapdragons, I just find always have thrips on them. I don't know if that's just a common thing for snapdragons, but last year and this year I'm going to give them one more try, but they just always seem to be full of thrips, and it's almost like an embarrassment. Like I almost want to tell people not to cut them because I don't want them to get home and find out that their plants are like full of bugs. I mean, it's different when you're making a bouquet and you can like cut it a day in advance and you can condition them and stuff, and then maybe most of the thrips kind of leave. But when people are cutting, you don't want them to have like a bouquet full of bugs. So And I also, this was the first year I tried dahlias, and the tarnished plant bugs just destroyed them and didn't really destroy anything else, but really seemed to destroy the dahlias. Um, so for next year, a few different things that I'm changing. So I do like the Rudbeckia, but I'm going to try planting like the Sahara, which is just a little bit more interesting and more colorful and that sort of thing, and see if people like it. I won't do the Gomphrena anymore. And I'm going to try some status that is more like pastel shades and things like that. I also found that I didn't have really any flowers until quite late in the season. So I'm going to be planting. I took really good notes in terms of like how long it took for things to reach maturity, and how long it took for them to bloom. So next year I'm planting quite a few things a lot earlier. I'm going to be planting a lot more stock because that is one of the earliest blooming flowers that I had. Next year I want to try doing some like workshops and sip and snips and those sorts of things to kind of, because like I said, for me, I'm trying to get people to come to me rather than me having to harvest everything and take it to markets or whatever else. I'm also going to be trying foxgloves, delphiniums, lupins, ranunculus, anemones, and I planted quite a few more peonies this fall. So obviously that'll take a couple of years, but and then some of my favorite podcasts, I really like Jenny Love's No Till Flowers podcast. I just like that it goes beyond the superficial into I'm kind of nerdy that way. So I love hearing about like the bricks numbers and all of those sorts of things that she talks about. So yeah, I think that's it.
That's fantastic. Jolanda, what's the name of your farm?
It's called Tierra Flores. So
Tierra
tierra in Spanish means like land or earth, and flores means flowers. But interestingly, it's also obviously my last name,
Oh,
or at least my married name. And so yeah,
oh, that's cool.
yeah, kind of
Um,
like land of flowers, I guess.
That's lovely. I like that. I want to get more people sharing, but I want to throw a question out there because you made me think about Rudbeckia. See, this is why this is good, because in my reflection, I didn't even think about my Rudbeckia. I had so much extra Rudbeckia, mostly of the, plain yellow varieties. And really nobody wanted it. And I'm so stumped by this because it just screams summer. Like it's early for summer and it's just welcome summer. And people love sunflowers. And
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I
this
thought, they look
color.
like little mini sunflowers, but hardly anybody cut them at all.
Okay, other people, what's up with your Rudbeckia?
For me, they didn't have a choice. They were just put into the market bouquet. So that's what I love them for. They're that little bit of like sunshine in if I don't have anything else. And that was really what saved us throughout the year was that I had those both perennial sunflowers, and Rudbeckia and et cetera, et cetera. That was so that people didn't have a choice. So I guess I didn't give them a choice
Yeah,
then, and everyone loved the bouquet. So
yeah.
that was, mhm.
Like I think they even stand on their own.
They
Like
do.
just a bouquet of Rudbeckia. It is so gorgeous. I'm stunned. I'm not giving up on it. Like I'm stunned that people, what other people? Do you sell Rudbeckia? I see people shaking their heads.
Theresa, it's Nancy Jordan again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It sells like hotcakes.
Okay. Good. Good. The one of my bricks and mortar designers, so this was kind of a new thing for me this year. I asked her at the end of the season, why not the Rudbeckia? And she said, quite honestly, like I'm totally new to it. Which sort of surprises me because you think this is a flower that's been around for a long time, but not necessarily for a flower shop that is just starting with local, right? Like they have been buying in chain flowers and they're probably not finding Rudbeckia there.
Well, it seems like everyone around me has it in their flower beds, so maybe it's just too common looking for them.
Maybe people think I went and cut it from side of the road or something.
It's a wildflower. That's what we get a lot. Not just about Rudbeckia, but just about the flower farm flowers. People think they're wildflowers.
Yeah.
While I'm still on here, another really good resource is Ellen Frost.
Oh, yeah.
And the Gardener's Workshop has an excellent course by Ellen, and it's all about local color flowers. And she has a flower shop in Baltimore that is strictly using local flowers.
She has,
Really good.
yeah, I like watching her
Oh,
YouTube channel too.
yes. Yeah.
Because I'm not a designer, and really she's been the person who has, just shown me really quickly, this is how you approach a canning jar, like
Yeah.
simple stuff like that. It's been really good.
Yeah, and she has it's so the course is amazing because it gives you the information to be able to promote local flowers in a way that, well, as she says, it makes you sound like an expert. And she's got it done. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an expensive course in the Gardener's Workshop for what you're getting in the knowledge of. But I'm a huge supporter of courses.
Okay. We've still got time here, folks. Someone else like to share? Andrea, wonderful.
Hi. So I'm Andrea, and I have Flora Borealis Flower Farm. And I had a similarly horrible season, just like many of you. Partly because of the deluge of rain that we had, and we have some low points on our land that pool water, and we're also on clay. So we lost a lot, and I mean a lot of stuff. I basically wasn't selling any flowers in the month of July. I attend a farmer's market, and I wasn't able to show up for about 4 weeks straight. And then sort of layered on top of that, I had some health things happening this summer too. So a lot of things got planted pretty late. So, but I will say that my Lizzie Anthus, like they just like filled in when I got back to the farmer's market in August, like they carried the show, and nobody seemed to mind that I was showing up to market with like just Lizzie Anthus and some frosted explosion grass. Like and people still don't really know what Lizzie Anthus are. So like, wow, what's this? So it just sort of reinforced that concept that you don't need to have a bouquet that has like 30 ingredients in it. Like you can keep it so simple, and people will come and buy, and they're not questioning if, oh, do you have any other little bits and bobs? Like they're just happy. So I was so thankful that our Lizzies carried us through. But yeah, and I think for me, I'm going to be sort of pulling back in terms of the number of sales channels that I'm pursuing, just to try to simplify and streamline things a bit, trying to make things easier on myself. So I'll be aiming more for retail rather than any wholesale. Not to say that it's completely cut out, but it won't be my focus. Retail will be my focus, mainly because I'm so small. I'm only about a quarter of an acre, so the numbers just don't work out for me to be doing a wholesale kind of sales channels. And yeah, and then in terms of resources, well, basically all the ones everybody's mentioned, because there's some really wonderful ones that everyone has sort of brought up, but I'll also mention a couple of others. So one of them, I've started watching more YouTube, and there's a lovely farmer. She's in the UK, she's in Yorkshire, and it's Bloom and Gray. And she just does a beautiful job of just showcasing what she's doing on the farm, all the highs and lows, all the mistakes, all the everything. And so it's really fun to watch her. And then I also enjoy, I've been enjoying watching Coram Deo. And I think that's a YouTube channel as well. So they're in, I think they're in, oh, hi. They're in Oklahoma. And so very different weather, but they have a lot of good just lessons that they're sort of passing along about being, sort of diving into simplicity and not sort of befuddling yourself with like a billion crops. So I think there's something to be learned there. So yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks so much, Andrea. I totally echo this Lysianthus. Like, I'm amazed at how there are a few flowers that are what I call crossover, right? Like in that they go from all forms of retail, weddings, right, to all kinds of designers. And Lysianthus is for sure one of them. The variety is incredible that you can get. So because I had so many this year, I introduced this Lysianthus festival in August. I think it was the third week. No, it was just after Canada Flower Week. But next year, I think to dovetail it with Canada Flower Week would be a great thing. And I can convinced that if people got to know it a little bit better, like it could do even better. But I just echo what you say. Like you don't need anything with it. Like you don't even have to have a filler with it. Nothing. You just put like even three stems, like if they're branch stems in a bouquet, they're wonderful. You sell them for $30. That's like $10 a stem. Amazing.
Can I ask a question about Lysianthus for those that do grow it? Because I haven't grown it and I'm not planning to grow it this year, but because one of the things is it takes so long to grow, right? So apparently a lot of growers will buy Lysianthus plugs. Is there some place in Canada that sells Lysianthus plugs that people buy from?
There is. I don't know if how far west they ship, but Jolly Farmer in New Brunswick is a Canadian grower and supplier of Lysianthus, and I think they grow the whole Voyage series and the ABC One series, I think, and some of the
And
Roseannes.
some of the Roseannes. I think they have three of them this year.
Yeah. If you order 5 trays of one variety, they'll custom grow for you too. I've been getting Jolly Farmers I coordinate the collective plug sale in Canada, and we've been getting Jolly Farmer for a number of years. It's a nice size plug. They sell them in 144 trays. Nobody else has the 144. And it's a great size to transplant right out. You can order them to come right when you need them. There is a minimum. You've got to order a full case, which in their case, they use big cases. So a full case would be like 8 trays or something. So that's a downside. That's a reason to order with someone else. But we also do cross Canada shipping in the collective plug sale that I do. So those orders start in September and they're placed by Thanksgiving for the following spring. So the orders are finished now for next spring, but we will do a kind of late orders offering, probably the first week and second week of January. There won't be a lot of Liz varieties left yet, and you'll have to get them like later in the season, which is, a problem for some, but maybe not everyone, because Lizzies take that long to grow. So that's why the orders go in so early. But in the collective sale, we can get it like pretty much any. And then, okay, now somebody will ask for variety and I'll say, oh no, we don't get that one. But like there's like 50 varieties of Lysianthus in that shop. So there's quite a lot of choices. Anybody else?
I can go. So my name is Louise. I am in Vaughan, so just north of Toronto. I'm on about an acre and a half, 2 acres of flowers, mostly pick your own. That's what I've been doing for about 4 years now. I started to do a bit more retail this past year and selling wholesale as well. So actually through the Toronto local flower collective. Um, For Picure, I think I'm pretty, I don't know, feel pretty confident about what I'm doing and which flowers people like or don't. I think what's important to me in the Picure is that the field always looks good. So I kind of gave up on flowers that are a one-time bloomer. It has to be cut and come again, because people want to take picture. They want to walk through a beautiful flower field. So I think this is what works best for us. I'm definitely putting more dahlias, probably more lisianthus in my field, for Picure. Some people I know wonder why I do that, and but I kind of like the idea that people are going to go home with flowers that I know are going to last, and lisianthus are great for that. So yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, Picure is, just, it's good. I like it. People do a lot less damage than you think they do. Like it's actually pretty good. What I sometimes find a little hard to manage is maybe, people's expectation. Like people want sunflowers. It's actually sunflowers the one thing that I don't grow anymore for Picure, because yeah, it's one seed, one flower. So I don't really see the point of having dead stock in one of my rows. I did do some branching sunflowers, but I find that they never do as well and people don't actually use them. So I kind of ditched the sunflowers for Picure, but I grow them for retail. So, yeah, and I guess I'm still in like learning process. So I'm still I just did my order from for all my seeds, and I probably ordered way too much stuff. I'm still trying to figure out what I like personally to grow, how I can make it work better. I don't know. Succession planning is one of the things that I think I can get better at. It would be nice to have feverfew for the whole summer and not a couple times in the year. So yeah, so trying to play with that.
Fantastic. Do you have a resource that you really like for?
I actually like Johnny Seed a fair bit. Their overwinter video was quite good, I thought.
Yeah, I echo that. It's excellent. Someone else? Or questions to the group? You've got it.
I can go. I'm calling in on the telephone. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. If you speak
Yeah.
up.
Okay. Okay, I'll try. My name is Shannon. I'm from Broad Fork Farm in Nova Scotia. Actually, 15 years ago, I remember getting a farm tour at Theresa's farm when I was an apprentice at Everdale. We've been growing flowers since 2012, but we also grow certified organic vegetables. The flowers are, I would say, probably about 30% of our income at this point. And we sell primarily at farmers market and DIY bulk buckets. So in terms of like these filters that are interesting and that Theresa mentioned, in terms of the seasons, early spring used to be super important for us because we did a lot of tulips and they did really well for us. We felt that they were like, we didn't end up with lots of crop failure. So we were able to sell most things and they did very well. But we, a few years ago, we decided to shift to not trying to go back to market so early because having the tulips really changed our business to focus a lot on early things like early vegetables and other early flowers. So once we decided that we wanted to take a break with tulips, it helped us get other things done in the spring on the farm. So at the moment, we don't do any tulips. For pests, okay, so one part, we've been shifting a lot towards more and more perennial flowers. And so this year, I would say probably maybe about 70% of our sales of flowers were perennials, which is the largest it's ever been. Yeah, so for pests, this year. It was the Viburnum opulus was really bad. We're thinking about just pulling the plants out. I think we might try giving them another shot, but I found this really great chart from John Dole with all the different species of viburnums and what they like. Some viburnums are more susceptible to the viburnum beetle than others. So I think we're going to try to focus on the viburnums that are not attractive to the viburnum beetle. This was our first year really doing dahlias. We had done a few early on in our first few years, and we found that they stored really, like the tubers stored super well for us. However, they only really started blooming right before our frost. And we cut them out. We also kind of thought they were expensive flowers, and when we sell at the farmer's market and in bulk buckets, we didn't really feel like we needed expensive blooms to add in since we weren't selling like straight bunches. So this year we trialed them back in. We did get a lot of different kinds of pests, and I wasn't super impressed, but we're going to give it another shot next year. This was our first year ever that we had ranunculus issues, and so we basically had a crop failure, although it was because we were doing a crop or a high tunnel rotation, and so we were trialing growing them in crates, and so they ended up with aphids, and we didn't sell any. What else? Some of my favorite perennials are echinops, peonies. I feel like we're kind of addicted to peony varieties. Echinacea is really important for us. Lady's mantle, baptisia, sedum, phlox, mountain mint. Columbine do really well for us as perennials, actually much better than when we used to do them as biennials. Potentially it's just like different climates. But some years they're much more abundant than others. Like we have columbines that are probably 10 years old, and they can put out a lot of blooms on one plant. One of my very favorites, actually for early spring, like around peony season, is stachys or lamb's ear. I harvest it kind of when it sends off that furry stalk, but before there's any blooms, and the vase life is incredible. What else? Our cool flowers usually do well. Our best ones are bupleurum, especially from saved seed, and orlea, and larkspur. And we save seed of all of those, and I feel like our saved seed germinates much better and has a lot more vigor. Things that we are probably going to cut out, but many of them I've cut out for a few years before and then brought back in, or sometimes I say I should cut them out every year. But they
That was great. Thanks so much. I'm really glad to hear about the columbine. It encourages me because I think it should perennialize here too. Maybe it's just been the warmer springs have knocked them back or something. So a question discussion in the chat about with the warmer winter that at least Southwest Ontario had last year, if people noticed a reduction in peonies in the flower production. I didn't really. I think there were probably more buds aborted on some varieties if they got too hot or whatever. But I don't know, other people on peonies? Did you have a problem last year?
I didn't have a problem last year. It's Nancy Jordan, but I'm really concerned about this year because a lot of ours, the eyes are popping up already because the fall's been so mild.
Huh. I would think they'll be okay. As soon as it gets cold, they'll be.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just so hardy. We've got someone joining, sorry. Okay, let's do one more reflection and we'll come close to wrapping up. Someone got another reflection or a question?
My dogs are barking, so I was sort of hesitating to ask, but I think that with the warm winter last year and late this year, I for so many reasons and for so many of the crops, especially the kind of perennial ones, I'm concerned. Everything was early. The peonies were like way early. I had peonies in May, which I think is sort of something that we all might have to think about, just in terms of and that there's going to be changes in weather that we can't control. So there may just be, in general, things that we all, regardless of where we are going to have to do in order to somehow adapt. Or so we may not have a choice about what crops we decide to grow and what we decide not to grow, because it's just no longer going to work within our climates. So I guess that's sort of just my final point. But I had, just for this year, it was sort of the first year I was able to cut from my peonies. So I was happy with whatever I got, but hoping that I'll have some next year. But I did have some die kind of a bit later in the season, again due to all the wet. Lost some tubers.
Really, really interesting. It's a good question. How do people see themselves adapting to what seems to be adverse weather events, but also a general trend, at least where we are in Southwest Ontario, Southern Ontario, maybe, the milder winter, the uh, extended fall. I mean, as much as you like it, because it was so lovely to dig the dahlias this fall and plant the tulips, it was just a pleasure. But like I say, all of my cool flowers, which went in either the last week of August or the first week of September, like depending, something like that, they've all bloomed. So yes, I pinched them back, but I don't have confidence that they're going to do well. We'll see if they do just as well next spring as previous year, where they were planted and they just had good roots and then stayed dormant until their first bloom was, next spring. So I'm a little worried about that. I don't know if it means I'm going to shift more to early spring planting, like earlier spring planting. I've noticed this to be a trend for me on my farm. Is like when I first started flower farming, I would have never thought week 10 Lysianthus, like that's beginning of March. Um, Now this will be in an unheated tunnel, but I wouldn't have even considered that. Um, so I don't know. It is all different, right? This is why keeping records is so important, to remember previous bloom dates. And we could just all be here next year going, oh my gosh, like it could be completely different. And we buffer up for the current trends, and then the trends change on us. And where I struggle is, as much as diversity, like diversity is good in that situation, right? Where you don't know what's going to happen. You could have extremes of heat, extremes of cool, different months, etc. But diversity is really contributing to the burnout. Like to have such diverse flowers on a farm is tougher and tougher. So I just can't keep the diversity. But that is, the buffer. And growing as much undercover as you can is a buffer, putting in more tunnels.
Also with back to the foliar spraying and just plant health in general. I remember Jenny Love saying years ago that when she started doing Jadam and all this stuff, that she said made flower farming fun again for her. And I'm finding that to be true as well, that by using these foliar sprays and all these different kinds of things, it's really helping to mitigate like the certain products that they were promoting. Now, of course, they're also promoting their own products, but saying after an adverse weather event, like after a flood or a drought or whatever, you can apply these foliar feeds and the plant then bounces right back so much more quickly. And I have noticed that to be true when I've used all of those products. So that makes a huge difference as well, to have those tools in the back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's a good suggestion. I think the foliar spraying is definitely something people could be experimenting with in these.
Theresa, I'm going to also say for the last 2 years, and I follow Jenny Love and Sustainable Flower Podcast, etc. And it's funny because way back in the early 90s, probably late 80s, early 90s, in our landscape business, we were heavy into integrated pest management and did a lot of beneficial insect. And I've started adding those last year into the hoop houses. and have noticed a real difference in that. Now, there is a cost to it, but you're able to control the pests really well. If you get there before it's really bad. So beneficial insects are another thing to consider. And a gnat, I think it's a Quebec company that I found that is the best for its wholesale. They deal with farmers. I think it's Anatus Bio. I'll look it up. But they pair you with a person in their business, and you actually discuss what your problems are or could be in your field or hoop house, and they suggest and you try what they suggest, and for me it worked.
I think farmers who do well with beneficials, that's exactly how they approach it. It's got to be very customized to you, because these, when you release insects, they have to have habitat. So
Totally.
if you don't have the habitat for the beneficials, you're completely wasting your money. So that's where, for sure, working with a consultant on that is a really useful thing.
And then the other thing I wanted to say, because I don't know if everyone saw this, but Janice suggested a new book by Alan Armitage and Kelly Garcia, The Field Guide to Specially Cut Flowers. And she said it's a good thing to put on your Christmas list.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
There's also a really good book just put out now. It's kind of expensive, but from the Seattle Flower Collective or Flower Wholesale Growers. I'm not sure what it is, but if you just type in Seattle Flowers Growers book, it's a really good handbook for post care as well.
And it's also introducing quality standards, which
Totally.
is something new that we haven't had in local flowers really in Canada. And just as a little FYI, I know the Canadian flower hubs who sell on OFN, so that there's 7 of them.
Yeah.
There's kind of a movement afoot there to collaborate over next year in some way on a Canadian quality standards book.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the book is, I think it's almost $75 US. Shipping is expensive to Canada, but you can ship it to a US UPS. And if you go together with a bunch of people and someone goes over the border to get it, it is less expensive. Or if you have someone you can ship it to in the US, works out well.
Okay. Well, we're nearing the end of our time, and this has been just fantastic to have just some FaceTime with people across the country. I'm sure you're like me. You just start to feel like, am I the only one with this problem? So it's wonderful to see you all, and it's wonderful to have you all participating. And as I say, we will have more. And the place to look for that, I'm just going to put my presentation, just share one more time here. Because I just want to show you, this is the Open Food Network website. This is the beginning of the sales site. So openfoodnetwork.ca. But if you go here to About, and you go to our projects, you see the Open Flower Network project. This page is currently getting a remake. So probably by the time you go there even, it'll have a different look to it. And it will have a list of, right now we're promoting still the gap analysis report, but there's a calendar here, and this is going to move up with populated with events and upcoming events. And you will see pages for various kind of theme areas with all the resources posted. And we do have a YouTube. Do I know it? I'm not even sure I do. Here we go. So Open Food Network Canada YouTube channel, and we will have playlists here of all of these recordings as we build them over time. And so you'll be able to go to those as well. So I'm going to stop there unless we have any final questions. I'll just leave you able to get the URL. And I'm going to sign off. And I hope you join for others. We're going to have a whole bunch over between now and March, and then a few over the summer, and then coming up again at the end of season next fall. So I look forward to talking with you a lot more. And I hope you have a really lovely day. And we will see you very soon. Bye, everybody.